Daniel Suarez will not return to Trackhouse racing in 2026, and Jesse Love could be a potential candidate for Legacy Motor Club headed into 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at some paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Noah Gragson's 2025 Rasmussen scheme that we'll see this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Honestly, the car looks alright in my opinion. I think the colors look okay, but I think there's some mismatch into this car that I'm not a big fan of either. But it's nice to see a new sponsor stepping up and sponsoring Noah Gragson at Chicago. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cody Ware's 2025 Arbys scheme that we'll see this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. We're going to talk more about Arbys in just a little bit, but I actually really like this car, and I like they're promoting the new cheesesteak, the Angus cheesesteak that they've got on the car. It does look alright. The colors on this car look really, really good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Todd Gilliland's 2025 Grillas Pickles Hot Pickles scheme that we'll see this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. I really love the look of this car. I like the different look compared to the other one. I love the paint scheme look. It does look solid. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Chicago. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Bilicki's 2025 Lifeway scheme that we'll see this weekend in the Xfinity Series race at Chicago. I really like the look of this car. The colors look really solid on this one. I think DGM Racing did a really, really good job on this one. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack at Chicago. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is AJ Allmendinger's 2025 Big Sips scheme that we'll see next weekend at Sonoma Raceway. This is the first time that Big Sips is sponsoring a car in the NASCAR Cup Series. I really like the look of this car. The colors of this car look really, really solid. They do look pretty good. Looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend. Next weekend, I think it looks good, and it does look all right. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dave & Buster's. As it was announced on Monday morning that Dave & Buster's has officially become a new sponsor for Tony Breidinger, and they will sponsor in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in a couple weekends now at Watkins Glen. The truck has also been revealed as well. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time that Dave & Buster's has sponsored a NASCAR either in quite some time or might be just the first time ever they have sponsored in NASCAR competition. Now, obviously, we know Tony Breidinger has struggled in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year. She just hasn't had the pace and speed when it comes to performance on the racetrack. But one thing she's been able to bring is a lot of funding and sponsorship. We've seen companies like Victoria's Secret come in, and we've seen some other big brands that you probably would never thought that would be on a NASCAR car come in and sponsor someone like Tony Breidinger. She's in the sport mainly because she does bring a lot of sponsorship to the table. She's not mainly there because of performance, right? We know that her performance has not been very good, and it's been very subpar at this point. But if you could bring sponsorship and funding, you're likely going to get the ride. I really hope for Tony she can step up to the plate and do a little bit better, but as of right now, she just hasn't been stepping up to the plate. But the big thing that can happen now is maybe her performance can get a little better, but I think it's nice to see that she's bringing a new sponsor in. I think it's cool to see Dave & Buster's come in. We've seen a lot of new companies come in the last couple of years. Amazon Prime's joined. Obviously, Hooters is no longer sponsoring at this point, but there's been some big sponsorship changes recently. I think it's really good to see that Dave & Buster's will sponsor Tony Breidinger in the 2025 season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about lead lap finishes in 2025. As it was noted by the NASCAR Insights account last night, that they noted a drought of the drivers have lead lap finishes so far this year. And among the top, the number one driver, of course, is Chase Elliott, who's had 17 lead lap finishes through the first 18 races of the year. The driver in second place is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with 15, who's actually tied with Kyle Larson for fifth with 15 as well. Chase Elliott's only had one finish off the lead lap, and that was a 15th place finish at Bristol Motor Speedway when Kyle Larson flat out dominated the race. Chase Elliott has been extremely consistent. He has not finished outside the top 20 through the first 18 races of the year, and I do expect that to continue with how good he's been on road courses. I also think it's kind of impressive to see that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and both him and Kyle Larson have also been pretty consistent as well up to this point. So I think these numbers are kind of impressive, kind of wild to see the numbers for the Cup finishes so far in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about DNS. As it was reported by the NASCAR Insights account yesterday or a couple days ago, that right now there are only 2 drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series so far in 2025 that have not had a single DNF so far this year. Those two drivers are Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick. According to them, Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick are the only two drivers without a DNF so far in the 2025 season. They've both been extremely consistent at times, so Tyler Reddick hasn't been as strong with the pace and speed on the track. Every other driver's had at least one DNF or probably two DNFs so far this year in particular. And that's one thing about Chase Elliott. Say what you want to say about maybe some of the inconsistent speed at times. Chase Elliott knows how to be really consistent when it comes to finishing races. So I think that's a really good thing about Chase Elliott. But I think it's impressive that both Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott have been able to have pretty good consistency so far and finish as many races as possible. Really exciting and really good stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Derrick Rose. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Derrick Rose will give the command for the NASCAR Cup Series race at the Chicago Street Course on Sunday. This is a really big deal. For those who do not know who Derrick Rose is someone who, in my opinion, could have potentially been one of the best NBA players we have ever seen. In the early 2010s, in the late 2010s, Derrick Rose was someone who was on his way up to the ranks and was having a lot of success with the Chicago Bulls. He is one of the most iconic players in the Chicago area. Obviously, Michael Jordan is the most iconic player in Chicago history, but Derrick Rose is someone who was really, really good. Unfortunately, Derrick Rose had a lot of injuries in the early 2010s that really affected his NBA career. I think Derrick Rose, though, getting an opportunity to give the command is really awesome. I love they're giving him that gesture. I think that's some really exciting stuff and pretty cool to see that he'll get the opportunity to give the command for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Chicago on Sunday afternoon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about High Limit Racing. As it was announced yesterday, the High Limit Racing will officially have their first ever televised event on a network in 2025. As it was announced that the Eldora race that High Limit will be having, which will be awarding $100,000, will be having on July 17th, will be televised on FS1 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a really, really big deal. For those who are not much in the dirt scene, High Limit Racing is a series that Kyle Larson owns, a series that's been really becoming a rival to the World of Outlaws when it comes to popularity and when it comes to the racing product as well. And I think for High Limit, this is a major, major deal to be on a national TV network. I think of High Limit. They've had a lot of success. They've been having a lot of good things go for the series. And I think in general, there's a lot of positivity around it. And I think this is a major deal for dirt racing. I think dirt racing is some of the best racing out there. I'm not able to watch as much of it, but what I've able to see, the racing's good. I'm always a big fan of the Chili Bowl Nationals. Try to watch it every single year. And in general, there's a lot of positivity when you look at the Eldora races that happen. It's also cool Eldora's back on the schedule in some way, shape, or form to be able to watch, because I think Eldora is a great track. I wish NASCAR was still going there at this particular moment and at this particular point. But nonetheless, I think it's really good to see, and I think that it's pretty awesome that the High Limit Racing Series will get a chance and opportunity to be on TV. I think that's awesome, and I think that's really, really cool, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Arbys. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Monday afternoon, that Arbys will be airing a commercial for this weekend's NASCAR Cup Series race at the Chicago Street Course. He actually showed some of that ad, as many of you probably have seen on there, and it's in association, of course, with Cody Ware, which, of course, Arbys is sponsoring Cody Ware this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Now, obviously, Cody Ware is probably the least talented guy in the NASCAR Cup Series. Let's be real and honest. So you know it's a pretty big deal for NASCAR when you have the slowest guy in the field on a week-by-week basis getting the chance and opportunity to have their own commercial. And I think that that's what's so big about I think that's what's been cool about NASCAR is if you've noticed in 2025 more than other years, I have seen more driver-oriented commercials for that kind of stuff than we've seen in prior years. I mean, we've seen the Brad Keselowski Consumer Cellular commercials. We've seen the new commercials of Miller Tech with Noah Gragson, and I believe it was Ryan Preece, I'm pretty sure, and a couple other drivers like Todd Gillen as well. In general, we've been seeing more of these kind of commercials on TV. And I think that's so important, right, is commercials back in the 2000s really got people hooked and got people interested. You see all these commercials, like these old commercials, but I think driver commercials are a really, really good thing. So I think in general, I think what's been happening here is really, really awesome. And I think it's also phenomenal to see that Arbys will get the chance and opportunity to air their own commercial at the Chicago Street Course I saw the ad. I think it looks really good. I think it does look positive for the future, and I think the more of these kind you can have, the better I think it's going to be for everybody involved. So pretty exciting stuff nonetheless, and pretty cool that there's an Arbys commercial coming out. Even if it's with the slowest guy in the Cup Series field at this moment right now, I think it's pretty cool to get the chance and the opportunity to air their own commercial for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Chicago. I think it also will be airing during the Xfinity Series race as well, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty cool to see Arbys has their own commercial coming out this weekend. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Classics once again. As it was announced on Monday late afternoon that NASCAR Classics page has officially uploaded 4 new Truck Series races in 2025. Now, what's significant about these truck races is these are lost Truck Series races, races that have not been really televised before or were televised but have been lost in time for quite some time, including the 1996 DeVille Biss Super Finish 200 at Nazareth Speedway. Here's a little fact about that race. So back in 1996, CBS, of course, was televising, I believe, at the time. But there was a big rainstorm that unfortunately affected the race. And that was, of course, when the Cup Series off after the Michigan race in 1996. That's also the only Truck Series race that Rusty Wallace ever ran in his career, where he finished, I believe, in 9th place in the number 22 Ford. I think that race being uploaded is a really big deal. And I want to say this about the NASCAR Classics page. I've been very critical of a lot of things in NASCAR, right, over the years. But one thing I've never been really critical of is the NASCAR Classics page. This page is probably one of the best things that NASCAR has done in quite some time. There's over 1,500 races altogether if you combine the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. There's about 40 or 41 Xfinity races. There's about 45 Truck Series races now. And there's over 1,500 NASCAR Cup Series races available, ranging only back from 1951 all the way to 2025. Now, there's some races from this year that still not been uploaded at this point that I do think are, and they continue uploading it pretty much on a day-by-day basis. It's been one of the best things we have seen in quite some time, and I think it's awesome that some new truck races are now officially available in the Truck Series to be watched. Pretty exciting and really, really good stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Mosak. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Connor Mosak will make his Xfinity Series debut for the 2025 year. As it was announced, he'll drive the number 14 car for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Now, Connor Mosak, of course, currently drives full-time in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for McAnally Hilgeman Racing and drives the number 81 car. Now, of course, he has made some select starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the past in 2024-2023, mostly for Junior Motorsports. And I gotta say, he may not be the best driver when it comes to racing on ovals, but when you look at his road course numbers, he is pretty good. And last year at the Chicago Street Course, he ran top 5 pretty much the whole entire race and showed some really impressive pace and really, really good speed. And while I don't think SS Greenlight Racing is one of the top level teams and organizations in the field, and you've got a really stacked field for the Xfinity race, you've got Shane Van Gisbergen, Connor Zilich, you've got Jack Perkins racing this weekend, you've got other drivers racing, of course, in this event, like Carson Quaffel's been a really good road racer this year. Sam Mayer's been really, really good. You got a lot of really good drivers racing, but I think that Connor Mosak could be slated for a top 20. Now, again, the SS Greenlight Racing equipment has not been that strong so far this season, but I do think that Connor could get behind the wheel of that car and do a really solid and really, really good job. So excited to see what he can do this weekend at Chicago. Excited to see what opportunities he can bring. I think Connor will contend for a top 20 because Carson Osbar drove that car, showed some okay speed, but got caught up in a couple instances and wrecks by overdrive in the corner at Coda. So we'll see what happens for Connor. Hope he can do a really good job and show some really good pace and really, really strong speed this weekend in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Chicago. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lavar Scott. As it was announced last night that Lavar Scott will officially make his NASCAR debut and run a couple of Xfinity Series races in 2025. As it was announced last night that Lavar Scott will be driving the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing for 2 NASCAR Xfinity Series events in 2025. His Xfinity Series debut will be in about 2 or 3 weeks from now at Dover Motor Speedway, and then his other start will take place at Gateway at the end of August for the regular season finale. Lavar Scott currently competes full-time in the ARCA Series currently at the moment, and while Lavar Scott, in my opinion, has shown some really, really good potential, he is still looking for his first career ARCA Series win. He always gets asked that question, are you going to win your first ever ARCA race, and when is that going to come? Now, I will say Rev Racing, when you look at their budget compared to, let's say, a team like Joe Gibbs Racing, even Pinnacle, they don't have as big of a budget compared to those teams, and that's why they've not been able to win a race at this point. Lavar Scott, I believe, is currently either leading the championship or in the top 5 of the series at this point. But sometimes drivers will get opportunities with smaller teams in the Xfinity Series, and I think Lavar does have quite a bit of potential. Now, what are realistic expectations for Lavar? Now, number one of the realistic expectations is to get as much experience as possible, because Alpha Prime Racing is a team they are going to, and while they've shown some flashes this year with their pace and speed, they're not a top-level team and a top organization. So I do think the goal should be for these events is to try to finish as many laps as possible and try to get as much rate of the race as you can get done. Goal, I think, maybe should be top 30. That should be the realistic goal for the event. But that's probably about the top goal I'd have for Lavar Scott, because these Xfinity Series fields are really strong and super, super competitive. But this is a great opportunity for Lavar. And depending on what happens with silly season for next year in Xfinity and Trucks, because I think those series are going to be a little more wild in regards to silly season, I do think that Lavar Scott is going to bring some good stuff to the table down the road. I think he's talented. I think he does have potential to be really, really good in the sport. And in a nutshell, I think this is a really solid and really good opportunity for him to make some starts in NASCAR Xfinity Series competition. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if he can perform. I think he's got a decent opportunity to show some good speed. We'll see what he can do in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in those couple starts in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the in-season tournament. As the NASCAR Twitter or X page yesterday put out a bit of an interesting post, and they confirmed that there's nobody in the field after a wild race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. They confirmed that there are no perfect brackets remaining in the NASCAR Cup Series currently at the moment right now, and no one fan will be able to win $1 million. Now, a driver is still going to win $1 million if they win the tournament altogether, but no fan has a perfect bracket at this moment right now. I really am going to be honest here, that's not a really good flex by NASCAR. I think the fact that there is no perfect brackets after race number 1 is a little bit disappointing, because a fan had an opportunity, if they had a perfect bracket, a fan would have had an opportunity to go out there and get this done. The problem is that when you start your bracket system at a super speedway like Atlanta, or start it at like Daytona or Talladega, there is a good chance and possibility that you may not have a good bracket after that. I personally think they should have started at a normal race like maybe Kansas, for example, or maybe like Dover in a couple of weeks, or maybe do it near the end of the regular season. I get that TNT wanted some sort of bracket system, and that's perfect and fine. The problem is that this in-season tournament has really, unfortunately, because I think starting it at Atlanta is not the best decision. I get that, starting at a road course like Chicago or Sonoma could also be chaotic, but I think you're also going to get a more legitimate guys getting through, because a super speedway is not the best way, in my opinion, to determine who is the best in this thing. And I get it's just a fun little system. I think it's a really good thing that NASCAR did as well. But at the same time, I would have not started the in-season tournament at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I would have started at a different track. I think not having a perfect bracket is not shocking and surprising, considering that basically everyone had a lot of chaos with it this year. You had a lot of wildness with it, and you had a lot of chaos with something like this. So I'm not shocked and surprised about this. I mean, when you have guys like Larson getting caught up in wrecks, when you have like Ty Dillon beating Denny Hamlin because of a wreck, same with Ryan Blaney getting beat by Carson Hocevar, and some other guys basically moving on because of wrecks and all that kind of stuff, you kind of lose interest in something like this. So to me, I'm not a big fan of how they did the NCAA tournament start off. I also think how they qualified people didn't make sense to me. I think that could have been changed. Otherwise, I think it's a cool thing, but there's also some things that can be fixed going forward with something like this, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR 25. Now, we've talked quite a bit about NASCAR 25 on this channel over the course of the last couple weeks, and there's a lot of details that are expected to be revealed in regards to NASCAR 25 in the not-so-distant future. Now, Ty Majeski was doing a little bit of background stuff in regards to NASCAR 25, and some things I noticed is that there's some new details that have been revealed, and it's also been confirmed that Indianapolis Raceway Park will be in the game for this year. NASCAR 25 will be coming out sometime in September or October. A release date is expected to be announced in the coming weeks, and we're also expected to get the driver rosters, I believe, by the end of this month. And we're hearing there's probably going to be around 250 to 260 drivers all together for this game. Looking at the background, I think there's a lot of things that are very interesting about the game coming out this year, and I'm definitely becoming more and more excited as this game comes out. But we also do have to have realistic expectations. I don't think people should be expecting for this to be the number one game that's been ever made by NASCAR. I still think NASCAR Thunder 2004 and games like NR 2003 are some of the best games that have ever been released. But NASCAR 25, there's a lot of people that want this game to be very, very good. And trust me, I want this game to be really, really good as well, because a good video game could really help the sport grow in a really, really big way. So I hope that we can get a really, really good game, and I have hope we will get a good game. I just don't want the game, people to go into this and see a disappointing game, be like, oh, NASCAR's in trouble. I am excited to see, though, this continue to work on things for this game in general, and I'm glad to see that Ty Majeski gave the fans a little bit of insight and a little bit of perspective in regards to the new NASCAR game coming out. I think that's exciting, and I think that's really good to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Atlanta TV ratings from this past weekend. And honestly, they are not very good. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday afternoon that TNT and True TV got 1.608 million viewers for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. There's no direct comparison from last year, as of course this race I believe was on NBC or USA in 2024, and of course this was the first race of the playoffs in the 2024 year. This race of course is in late June. This is one of the lowest watched NASCAR Cup Series races of 2025. I believe this actually is the least watched race we have seen so far in the NASCAR Cup Series race this year. Now, keep in mind, this race did have about a 30-minute delay to start the event, or had about an hour-long delay during the middle portion of the event. And when you do have a rain delay, sometimes people do tune out of these events. But I'm going to say one thing. Saturday races just don't do very, very well on the TV ratings, unfortunately. That's been a major unfortunate factor, is when you have a race that happens in the middle of the week and happens on a Saturday night, the ratings for those aren't as good. That's why you have seen less Saturday races in NASCAR, and that's why you're probably only going to see maybe 1 or 2 Saturday races instead of the 3 that we got this year. I think it was really cool they gave the chance for a race to happen on a Saturday night. I like Saturday night races, and I think Saturday night races are good because it gives some of those fans an opportunity to have a Sunday off sometimes and get things done. The problem is that though the ratings just aren't that good, and people are saying there wasn't a ton of promotion for this race, I'm going to say this: there was a lot of promotion for the Atlanta NASCAR Cup race. They were promoting it really, really well. I know TNT's been promoting for like their NHL games and some of their NBA games as well. So I don't think that's entirely accurate there. Now, maybe we'll see an increase in the ratings going forward as time progresses and goes on, but I think the ratings are definitely a little bit disappointing. It did beat Formula One by about 500,000, but I think having under 2 million for a race at Atlanta, which is a fantastic race, is not that great in my opinion. So disappointing news for sure to see the ratings down quite a bit from prior years, but I think Atlanta's a good thing, and I think it's disappointing to see those numbers for the Atlanta race. I wish they were a little bit better, but it's disappointing to see those numbers not being very, very good in the NASCAR Cup Series for the event, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Redline Motorsports. As it was reported by Chris Knight from Catchments.com yesterday, that Redline Motorsports is hoping to field a full-time NASCAR team in 2026. They're going to partner up with Brad Perez this weekend in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at the Chicago Street Course. They are going to sponsor him in some way, shape, or form for the event. Now, Redline Motorsports is a partnership by Tristan Sumter, who I believe is an IT guy, if I'm not mistaken, and a couple other big names, but one person that caught my eye and attention is Darius Smith, who I believe is a 3-time wide receiving all-star, I'm pretty sure, who has played in the Pro Bowl as well, and I believe also maybe does have a Super Bowl championship as well in the NFL. Now, Redline Motorsports is a new team that is coming in. Now, a lot of people, when they saw this, are saying, oh God, this is going to be another team that is going to be in the NASCAR Cup Series, and they're not going to be looking to jump up. Now, I don't think this is a team that will compete in NASCAR Cup competition. I think the number, of course, will be number 55, according to what has been reported by Chris Knight as well. Now, I'm interested to see who they could get if they do go full-time. My prediction is that this team, more than likely, will end up in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. And I think the fact that they are partnering up with Brad Perez tells you this may be a potential landing spot for Brad Perez going into next season. Brad Perez, in my opinion, is a very talented race car driver. He's been really good on road courses in particular. But I've seen him take mid-pack equipment and do a decent job with it, especially on road course and even some short tracks as well. And I think it's cool that we might get a new team in NASCAR competition altogether, because a lot of these people that are coming in don't really have a ton of experience on the NASCAR front. But I think that a new team like Redline coming in is a really, really big deal. And I think partnering up with someone like maybe Brad Perez, or partnering up with a younger driver who does have a lot of potential to really help a team grow like this, I think that's very, very important. So we'll see what happens down the road in regards to that. But it seems like a new team is coming in. That's what's exciting, is new teams coming in and new teams being available. Maybe they could be a team that is associated with Dodge coming in. That's very interesting for maybe the Truck Series program. Who knows at this point? Maybe Cleus Farron could be the driver for that. Who knows? But nonetheless, I think it's cool that it seems like a new team likely will be coming in to NASCAR competition, maybe in the Xfinity Series in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Days of Thunder. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Monday evening, after I had seen the Formula One movie, that it was confirmed that night that a sequel is officially in the works, and Tom Cruise has officially confirmed it as well. We have been hearing rumors and speculation over the course of the last couple months that they have begun development in regards to Days of Thunder, but there have not been any official reports out there. But now it's been confirmed and officially that they are beginning to work on a sequel for the movie. And according to an article, I believe Jerry Bruckheimer and Joseph Kosinski are expected to be major players in regards to this movie. Now, Days of Thunder. Let's talk about this. Days of Thunder is one of the most iconic racing movies ever, and one of the most iconic movies in general over the last 35 years. Days of Thunder was released 35 years ago in late June. And it was one of movies that really transcended NASCAR to the next level. It was a movie that was like a cult film, but it's a movie that is still talked about to this day among some of the greatest racing movies of all time. And it is a phenomenal movie. And it's one of the best movies we have ever seen. And Tom Cruise has been very interested in releasing it. I mean, he did Top Gun Maverick, and I've seen Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick was absolutely amazing. It was a really, really good movie. I went to see it with my family, and it was really good. If it's anything like the Formula One movie, I do have a lot of hope for it. Now, people expecting a Days of Thunder sequel to be completely accurate how NASCAR is or any motorsport is, I don't think that's very realistic in my opinion. We have to have our expectations a little bit limited kind of on that nature. But I think a sequel to Days of Thunder is something that is really needed for the sport, and I think that it will really help the sport grow in a really, really big way if it does end up happening, right? Because I think Days of Thunder is a great, great movie. And you would have Tom Cruise's character, of course, Cole Trickle, come back. They're trying to find a way maybe to have like Cole Trickle and Brad Pitt's character race against each other. They were like rivals back in the 90s or 2000s or something like that, which I think would be interesting if we could have both those universes combined together in some way, shape, or form. But I think a Days of Thunder sequel is a no-brainer at this point. I think it'd be a massive success in the box office, and I think it would grow the sport in a major way once again. I think that the F1 movie is going to help grow Formula One in the U.S. once again, and I think a Days of Thunder sequel is absolutely needed. So excited to see this. Sounds like its sequel is in the works right now. Pretty cool to see that we might be getting a Days of Thunder sequel in the future. I think that's really, really exciting in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Steve Newmark. As it was shockingly announced yesterday morning that Steve Newmark has officially left RFK Racing as president after being with the team for 15 years. And it was confirmed they'll be joining the University of North Carolina as a new academic director, I believe replacing B.A. Cunningham or one of the Cunninghams over there at the University of North Carolina. This is really shocking and really, really surprising, considering Steve Newmark has been with RFK Racing now as president since the 2010 season. Steve Newmark has been there in the ups and downs of RFK Racing. When Roush was basically at their peak around 2010 and 2011, they were having a ton of success at the time. Carl Lavar was winning races. Matt Kenseth was winning races. 2011, they had a really good chance to win the championship that season. Carl Lavar's only won one race, but was able to, of course, tie Tony Stewart for the championship that year. Tony Stewart, of course, won the tiebreaker that season because Tony Stewart was able to win 5 races of the last 10 events and won in a tiebreaker by winning at Homestead Miami Speedway. Matt Kenseth won some races that season as well. And then he also kind of was there for the fall of RFK Racing. Then Brad came in and took over the team in 2022. And Brad has done a fantastic job really building this program. And now you've got 2 drivers who can make the playoffs this year, and a third one if Brad continues to perform at the level he's been performing over the course of the last couple of weeks. I think him leaving the team is going to basically kind of be unfortunate. And my question is, who comes in as a new president for RFK Racing? Because, again, this guy has been with this team for a very, very long time and has been involved in the sport for many, many years. And he's been there for a long time. So seeing someone like this leave is definitely disappointing to hear. And I think a lot of people absolutely want to see a lot of success from someone like Steve Newmark when it comes over to the University of North Carolina, because they had some unfortunate stuff happen in their academic department, unfortunately, that caused some rifts to happen and some changes that definitely needed to be made over there. So I'm, again, very interested to see how he's going to do over there next year and the remainder of this year. There's going to be a transitioning happening, but I'm also, again, very interested to see who's going to become the new president of the team. Is someone like in the lower section of the team and organization going to take over, or are they going to bring someone that's not signed right now at the moment to become the president of the team? I mean, some will say Ty Norris, but Ty Norris is very closely affiliated with College Racing right now at the moment, and he's helped that team get a lot better. So I don't think you're going to get someone like Ty Norris to come over there. Nonetheless, pretty crazy to see that Steve Newmark is no longer involved with RFK Racing. Again, he's been there for a very, very long time, so it's a little bit shocking to see that kind of move happen at this point. I was a little surprised to see this, that Steve Newmark's no longer part of this organization going forward. It's disappointing news. I wish it didn't have to happen. Steve was leaving the team after being there for quite some time, but sometimes change does need to be made, and probably he had an opportunity to go somewhere else, and sometimes you get tired of the grind among other things, and you get to do something a little bit more fun. So congratulations, Steve, on a long-term success with RFK Racing, helping that team build, and congratulations him on a long career with the RFK Racing team and RFK Racing organization. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports NASCAR lawsuit. As it was reported by Bob Pockers yesterday, and we talked about this on the channel a couple days ago on Monday, it was reported that the judge has denied motion for 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports to force NFL, NBA, and NHL to comply with subpoena for financial information from those companies. They've stated a couple different reasons. One, a lot of the information is already public at this point. And number two, that a lot of that information they're asking for was not relevant to their case and helping them have the opportunity chance to win the case. This is very similar to what NASCAR is trying to do when they were trying to get information from all the teams that signed the charter agreement, like, of course, a team like the Haas Factory team, a team like Trackhouse, Hendrick Motorsports, RFK Racing, all these organizations, except College, which College did approve to give out pretty much all their information available, and that information could be available in the future for a lot of us to see. This is very similar to that, but of course a lot of the information is public, because a lot of the sports, like the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the MLB, all these companies, they basically have a lot of their public information out there. And when it comes to contracts, for example, you kind of know what the contracts are for all the teams and all the players as well. In NASCAR, for example, a lot of those contracts are not available for the public to see in general. This is definitely a little bit of a loss for 2011 in Front Row, and when we look at this case in general, I think it's really tough to say who is going to win the lawsuit altogether, because originally I would have said NASCAR was going to win the lawsuit. Then when the new judge came in, Kenneth Bell, which, by the way, Kenneth Bell was not the judge who ruled on this ruling. This is a judge in New York. It wasn't confirmed exactly which judge was the one who ruled on this case right here to get that public information. But this judge denying it is definitely a loss for the teams. But it's kind of been inconsistent in the case. There's been change in that. And we're also sort of waiting on what's going to happen with the preliminary injunctions. Are the judges going to hear or not? This will mean that 2011 and Front Row will not be effective for this weekend at Chicago, because if a decision was made today, it would not start till next week at Sonoma. And I think they would like to wait until until the year is over at this point, because if they lose their charters, even if they make the playoffs, they would still be starting around 16th or 17th at the middle of the field more than likely when it comes to their qualifying run, which would help some people in the mid-pack if they were to lose their charters before the end of the regular season. But if a hearing is to happen and the judges do make a decision on that front, then we should be having a hearing really soon. But going back to the original ruling here, yeah, it's not really shocking or really surprising, unfortunately, because I think when you look at something like this being happening is not surprising at this point. It's disappointing for those teams because I think that they should be able to get as much information as they can to help their case going forward. But it's also, again, not surprising and shocking to see something like this happen where they can't get all the information they do really want at this particular moment and particular point. And I think that you're not always going to get the information you want if you want to have success going forward. So interesting stuff for sure in regards to the case. We're probably going to get more updates on this case as time progresses and goes on. And we'll probably continue to get more information on this soon. We're still waiting on what's going to happen with some of the charter stuff and the charter negotiations and other areas. But it's interesting stuff for sure. And we'll be continuing to pay attention to the story as time progresses and goes on. And we'll see what happens with the lawsuit going forward into the not so distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Reic Racing. Now, it was announced last week, shockingly, on Thursday afternoon, that TJ Bashire, who used to be with Spire Motorsports, a co-owner with that team, it was announced that he had purchased Reic Racing's assets and is wanting to become a three-car team by the 2027 season. But we have not really heard exactly how much Reic Racing was officially sold. That was until yesterday or a couple days ago. On Door Bumper Clear, they talked about the sale during the end of this episode. And according to what was stated by Freddie Kraft, they say that it's rumored to have been over $100 million for the sale for Reic Racing. And according to what Breakheart mentioned in his video, he's hearing it might have been like $120 or $130 million or something like that. Now think about that. Reic Racing being sold for $100 million. Now, it's unknown if that is just for the charters at this point or if that's for everything altogether. My guess, more than likely, is that is for everything, including the charters and all the other assets as well with the team and organization, meaning like the charters, meaning like the garage, meaning like the shop, for example, and many other aspects of that as well. We already know at this particular moment and point right now that we know Cody Ware is going to drive the number 51 car next year for Reic Racing in the number 51. But again, they want to be a three-car team going into the future. But for a team to be sold for $100 million, over $100 million like Reic Ware, that is absolutely wild. Reic Ware, if this is true in any way, shape, or form, which I trust Freddie Kraft on this, that is a massive, massive number. And I think Tommy also confirmed that on the podcast as well, that there's a lot of truth to those rumors. That is absolutely wild. That over $100 million was spent on a team like Reic Racing. Look, Reic Racing is a team that a couple years ago, they were on the up and up. They were showing a ton of pace and showing a lot of really good raw speed and a lot of potential. They were on their way up to be a team that could have been super, super successful in the sport. But then, of course, they had some things that happened. They lost Justin Haley to Spire Motorsports. They brought Corey LaJoie in, and Corey actually had some decent performance with the team. And then, of course, they decided to go ahead and choose Cody Ware to be the full-time driver. This is no offense and no disrespect to Cody Ware, but Cody Ware is the worst full-time driver in NASCAR Cup at the moment. He's basically the lost lamb at this point in the NASCAR Cup Series compared to everybody else at this point. And even they were kind of throwing jabs at Reic Ware with Tommy Ballman, who's a competition director over there at this moment, kind of listening into it. I think for Reic Racing, though, to get 100 for Reic Ware, this is huge because they're going to expand their NHRA program going into next year. I am very interested to see who's going to be the drivers outside of Ware into the future, and could they potentially switch to Dodge if they move up to NASCAR Cup competition? Because there is a lot of talk and speculation that Dodge could be in the NASCAR Cup Series as early as the 2026 season, which would be a major deal if something like that was to end up happening. And that's going to be something to be paying attention to, is who's going to go there. Like Corey LaJoie could be a potential candidate to go there with his prior work with Spire and TJ Bashire, who left Spire working over there now at Reic Ware and owning the team and owning the organization. I think there's a very realistic possibility that you are going to see potentially Corey LaJoie over there. I think if they stay with Ford in the future, I think Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, who currently drive for the Haas factory team at this point, I could absolutely see them getting the chance and opportunity to potentially race with that team in the near future, make some select Cup starts next year. And I even think Harrison Burton is a potential possibility as well. Harrison Burton drove for Reic Racing at the All-Star race, albeit was not that fast in the event, but he had a good chance and opportunity, and he's been doing a really, really good job with AM Racing this season. He's brought that team a lot of really good pace and really strong speed so far into 2025 here, and I think if he moved up the Cup next year, that wouldn't be the most shocking and most surprising thing at this point. So we'll see what happens in the near future in regards to Rick Ware, but to have a sale over $100 million for a team like the RWR organization is absolutely huge and absolutely wild numbers to hear. That's kind of crazy, the numbers that we kind of got reported on, and I think over $100 million for an organization like Rick Ware Racing is kind of wild and kind of crazy, and it's a huge number definitely for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Jesse Love. Now, Jimmy Johnson was doing a little bit of podcast with Marty Snyder. They pretty much do every single week, called the Never Settle podcast. And they talked about a couple drivers and prospects that they are looking at for in the future for 2026 and also 2027. And two drivers that were mentioned by Jimmy Johnson were Jesse Love and Connor Zilich. Now, Jimmy Johnson also did confirm that Legacy Motor Club does want to be a three-car team at the earliest in 2026, and they may have some announcements coming on that very, very soon, according to Jimmy Johnson. But he also said the latest that they would probably like to have a third car is the 2027 season. Now, beginning with the first driver, Connor Zilich. Connor Zilich is in no way, shape, or form leaving the Trackhouse Racing team and organization. Even if Toyota does have a little more of a lucrative deal and Legacy is a little bit quicker times than Trackhouse Racing at points, Connor Zilich is heavily in the Chevrolet camp, and I think down the road you're going to see Connor Zilich at a top-level Chevy team like a Hendrick in the future as the number one guy over there in the not-so-distant future. So I don't think Connor Zilich will ever leave there to go, and that's why we'll talk about the Suarez news here in just a short little bit. But moving on to Jesse Love. This is now the second time we've heard Jesse's Love name as a potential candidate and possible driver that could race for Legacy Motor Club next season. Jesse Love is not affiliated with a manufacturer currently at the moment. Remember, he started his career in divisions in ARCA, racing in a Toyota for Venturini Motorsports, and he had a dominant season with that team. I think he had 8 or 9 wins in ARCA in 2022 or 2023, if I'm not mistaken, and was really dominant. Then, of course, he signed with Rich Schultz Racing for the 2024 season, and he had a ton of success. He's had a couple wins so far this year. Now, Jesse Love, in my opinion, is someone, he's not as strong as like Connor Zilich on the prospect side of things or Corey Heim, but I think Jesse Love is still a very solid and a really, really good race car driver. Now, Jesse Love has made a couple starts in the NASCAR Cup Series this year, albeit his numbers have not been the most impressive, but let's be real and honest, that 33 car, even though I think RCR struggled at times, they do have more speed generally than that 33 car. The 33 is just generally out to lunch. I do think Austin Hill is going to struggle quite a bit in the NASCAR Cup event, which someone will be going home for that race, even though I think Austin Hill is not that bad of a race car driver, all things considered. And he, of course, he's a pretty good road course racer too when you look at his NASCAR Xfinity Series numbers. And I think in general, Jesse Love is someone who is very high on a lot of people's lists. And you look at RCR, the thing is, Jesse Love probably does want to be a NASCAR Cup Series driver, and especially with talks of maybe Connor Zilich being a full-time NASCAR Cup guy next year with Trackhouse Racing at this point, I think it would make a lot of sense for Jesse Love to potentially, who is fantastic friends with Connor Zilich. It would be pretty interesting if you could see something like that happen, where we could see someone like him move up to the NASCAR Cup Series next year and be going up against Connor. That'd be a really good battle to watch because I think both are very talented and really good. But we also know both drivers are probably also going to struggle at the same time in the NASCAR Cup Series if he moves up. But I think that's the thing that's interesting. Legacy Motor Club wants to be a 3-car team going into next season. Now, Legacy Motor Club, they're a very solid race car team at this point. And this is a team that has shown a lot of improvement. Legacy, in my opinion, is probably the most improved team in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. Last year, both cars were out for lunch. John Hunter finished 35th in the regular season standings. And yes, Eric Jones missed 2 or 3 races last season, but he finished 28th or 29th in the points. Both drivers are in the top 25 in the standings. John Hunter, I think, is like 22nd or 23rd in the points. And John Hunter has had 6 or 7 top 10s so far this year. It's more than drivers, I think, not Tyler Reddick anymore, but it's more than Kyle Busch this year. It's more than drivers like Alex Bowman, if I'm not mistaken, and other drivers in the field as well. And Erik Jones has jumped from having a terrible season so far this year to having an actually really good season. He has jumped from basically being 31st to 32nd after the first quarter of the season, and he's jumped inside the top 20 in points, and Erik Jones' consistency has been good. He just picked up a top 5 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, aka Echo Park, which is still a stupid name, by the way, but I think that team's been getting a lot better. But we've also seen teams that have also expanded, and then they've struggled quite a bit. Front row this year, they've had some good speed at times. Zane Smith's been their best driver so far this year, but Zane Smith also has not been, that's been the best guy so far. The other two cars have struggled a little bit this year, and Noah Gragson has been quite a bit out for lunch in the 2025 season, unfortunately. But I think if they expand it, it would definitely not be surprising because they want to be a 3-car team. And RFK, they've had some struggles, but that team's been one of the better ones that have expanded the 3 cars so far this year. I look at 20-11, they've been off a little bit this year compared to prior years. I think the lawsuit's definitely playing a big role in that more than anything else at the moment right now. But I think it would definitely make a ton of sense for them if they were going to promote anybody from the lower series. I think Jesse Love would be a really good candidate for that. Again, I would not expect Jesse Love to come in and set the world on fire in Cup as a rookie, but I also think expectations should not be super, super high for rookies in this field. That's the problem I think a lot of us fans do have, and I'm kind of guilty of this as well. We do put really high expectations on young drivers to come into this series and perform at a very top level instantly and off from the get-go. The problem is we do that way too much, and we do that way too quickly at this point. But nonetheless, I think that for Jesse Love, if he gets moved up, he's a really good prospect. I think he's the number 3 prospect currently at the moment outside of Corey Heim and Connor. He's probably the best of the rest of the guys when it comes to Cup. I think there's really only 2 guys that are truly ready for Cup, and that's Corey Heim and Connor Zilich at this point, who I think could handle the pressure and perform pretty good, and I think could contend for wins pretty quickly after they get this stuff figured out. So I'm interested to see when this move will happen. It sounds like, again, there's a real good chance of possibly that something like this will happen for next year. Jesse Love could move up. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if Jesse Love does move up potentially to the NASCAR Cup Series in the 2026 year and 2026 season, or at the latest 2027. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story in today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Suarez. Now, we did a video covering a story on the channel yesterday, but it was officially announced and confirmed yesterday afternoon that Daniel Suarez has confirmed that he will not return to Trackhouse Racing in the 2026 season. Trackhouse Racing released a statement yesterday afternoon thanking Daniel Suarez for all the success he's had over the course of the last 5 years, and they do wish Daniel Suarez the best of luck on that front. Now, Daniel Suarez did go on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. We did not talk about this in the original video yesterday, but he went on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio yesterday, and he did say that he is not sad about the suits. He has known about the suits for quite some time, really for the last couple months, but he's been sitting on making the official announcement and decision, and they did confirm that this announcement was made to him last night, that they basically confirmed it, and they had a luncheon. They kind of got things out and things off their chest on some performances with the team, and they also wish Daniel Suarez the best of luck at this point. Coming into this year, this was going to be a make-or-break season for Daniel Suarez at Trackhouse Racing, and you could kind of tell there were some things that were really happening. There was the writing on the wall. I think the thing that started being the writing on the wall was, one, getting only a 1-year extension with Trackhouse Racing. If he had a multi-year deal with the team, he would be back with this program for 2026, but the fact they only gave him a 1-year deal for the 2025 year told me they're saying, okay, you really need to step it up to the plate and do really good, otherwise you're going to lose your ride with this team. The other thing is Pitbull leaving. Remember, early in the year during Daytona 500 Week, it was shockingly confirmed that Pitbull would be leaving Trackhouse Racing effective immediately, and basically after being with the team really since 2021 going into 2020, from 2020 going into 2021, when he announced he'd be leaving the team to go pursue other things, I had heard there might have been a disagreement between how long Suarez's contract was going to be over there, and that's one of the reasons why he jumped ship. And also Ty Norris leaving the program did not help the organization in any way. Losing them was a huge moment. That was where I was like, okay, Suarez's leash is not very tight at this point, and he could lose his ride at this program. And he had to step up and run well. And unfortunately for Suarez, outside some really good runs early in the season, it has been a very disappointing season for Suarez. I did some looking at his stats before last night, and his numbers are really, really concerning. He is 29th in the regular season standings currently at the moment. He has only got 31 more points on Shane Van Gisbergen this season, who is a rookie in the NASCAR Cup Series at this point. And Shane Van Gisbergen already has a win compared to Suarez, and Shane Van Gisbergen only has one less top 10 than Daniel Suarez and has the same amount of top 5s as Daniel Suarez does, same amount of top 10s, or one less top 10, I'm pretty sure, and he has a win so far this year. And for Daniel Suarez, only has one top 5 in particular. The other concerning thing, Daniel Suarez has only 18 stage points this year. It has been generally a rough season for this driver. His numbers have not been abysmal when you look at the finishes, but he just doesn't have the consistent pace and speed to go out there and score stage points at this moment. Daniel Suarez had to do really good this season, and unfortunate reality is Daniel Suarez was not stepping up to the plate and wasn't doing as good as I think a lot of people were really hoping for at this point. And that's why, unfortunately for Suarez, he is not returning to this team next season. Now, what does this mean for Suarez? We'll get to that in just a second. Let's talk about his likely replacement for next year. So with this move happening, it's not been confirmed at this time, but more than likely Connor Zilich will be taking over that number 99, or could be renumbered, maybe moves over the 88, Shane Van Gisbergen goes to the 99 next season, and basically maybe Connor Zilich goes to the 88, which is renumbered, or the 87 that we've been seeing. But Connor Zilich is going to be in the NASCAR Cup Series more than likely in 2026. Now, some are going to be saying, I've seen a lot of people talking about this, Connor Zilich is getting rushed up. Everyone's going to be saying that. He's only 18 or 19 years old at this point. Why move him up to the NASCAR Cup Series? Now, if this was 2018 or 2019, I would completely understand why people are saying this, considering back then the cars were very similar. The Gen 6 car and the Xfinity Series platforms back in 2018 or 2019 were very, very comparable. Here's the issue. The Xfinity and Cup cars are radically different. The Cup car is so much different. In fact, a lot of guys go straight from the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and they have success in Cup pretty quickly. Look at Carson Hocevar, for example. Look at Zane Smith in the last year or so. Those guys have been doing a pretty good job, and they didn't race Xfinity much at all. Carson made a couple starts in Xfinity, but he didn't run full-time with the Spire Motorsports team, and they just jumped him up the Cup. And I think it's more important for young drivers now to get experience in the next-gen car more than ever. And yeah, I don't think people should also be expecting an 18 or 19-year-old driver to immediately perform right off the get-go. Not everyone is going to be like Jeff Gordon. Not everyone is going to perform at the same level as like Chase Elliott did in 2016 or Kyle Larson did in 2014 as rookies. You shouldn't be expecting that from a young driver. Sometimes it takes a couple years. But Connor Zilich, unlike drivers like Ty Gibbs, they have the maturity. Connor has a lot more maturity, and drivers have stated that Connor Zilich, being 19, he acts like a 35-year-old driver, which is a really good thing, by the way, because it shows maturity at that particular point. And Connor Zilich is going to give you a better chance and opportunity to go for wins and victories a lot sooner than it is with Daniel Suarez. And I think that Connor would probably perform on the same level in the standings as Daniel Suarez has. So I think that this is a no-brainer move at this point to put Connor Zilich behind the wheel of this car. And Connor, like I said, is a really good driver. I'm not saying Daniel Suarez sucks, because Suarez is a solid driver, but I think Zilich right now is a better option for the team at this moment than Daniel Suarez is. Now, going back to Daniel Suarez, what does this mean for him going into next year? The problem is there's not a lot of good Cup options out there at this moment right now. It's more than likely he's not going to be in the Cup Series, because some will talk about Kaulig Racing. I thought Kaulig might have been a good option for next year, but Allmendinger's set for next year. And according to Bob, it's expected that Ty Dillon is going to return to the program next year, and they're working on a contract extension at this moment. Plus, Ty Dillon's not been doing half that bad this season despite the results. He's better than where the results have shown so far this season. I think about there's talk of legacy expanding, but Jets level likely at the rise. Some will say 23-11, but all three drivers under contract for next year. If anyone's going to get replaced, Corey Heim's going to take over that seat. And then none of the top-level teams are available. RCR is not available for next year. Hendrick's not available for next year. Teams like Joe Gibbs are not available for next year. So you now look at the Xfinity Series. And I think there's one team in particular, and I look at for Suarez right now, and that is the 88 car for Junior Motorsports, or the 9 for Junior Motorsports. 88 car is likely going to be vacated. Bob has mentioned that there's a lot of guys trying to vie for that seat going into next year. I think Suarez would be the best option for that car, because Suarez won with them in Xfinity, and he's an Xfinity Series champion, for crying out loud. So I think Suarez would actually be a really, really good option to put behind the wheel of this car if he was to be the one they chose to get behind the wheel of this seat, instead of a guy like a Connor Hall, for example, or a Raja Karuf, who was rumored to run for this team at least on a part-time stint. Because I think with Suarez, he would be a championship contender, because the 88 car has been one of the strongest cars this season, and I think Suarez in a top-level Xfinity ride would not be a terrible option. It's not a bad thing to move down to the lower series, by the way. Plus, it could lead them down the road if Junior Motorsports ever wants to move their team up to the NASCAR Cup Series in the future. I think Suarez would be that guy they could absolutely use. There's also Colleague Racing, but I think all the drivers outside of maybe Josh Williams are going to return next season. And if Suarez goes, he might go to the 11 car next year. But as of right now, at this moment, I'm leaning toward him going to Junior Motorsports. Dale Jr. has been a fan of him. I think that's where he'll likely end up in the 2026 season. It's disappointing for Suarez fans, but he just hasn't been performing, and he's been a solid driver, but he's not been setting the world on fire, and I'm not shocked to see that Daniel Suarez won't be returning next year. It's disappointing for Suarez fans, I get it, but Suarez is saying, don't be upset. I've probably got a good opportunity coming down the road. We'll see what happens going forward, and we'll see who gets that right, but it's likely going to be Connor Zilich taking over the seat. We'll hopefully see Daniel Suarez go somewhere for the 2026 season. So, that is going to be our today's NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. And comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Who do you think is going to take the 88 car? Most likely Connor Zilich, or the 99 car next year. You think it's going to be Zilich? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And more thoughts about Jess Love potentially moving up to Legacy Motor Club next season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If any major news breaks later today, we'll discuss it live on the channel. If there's not a ton of news today, you should be seeing the Xfinity Series race picks for Chicago. That could get moved to Thursday, though. There will be Cup picks for the Grand Park 165. There also should be the painting video dropping as well. I could move that to Friday. There will be a NASCAR news video most likely on Friday as well, along with some other content dropping on the 4th of July. Happy early 4th of July, by the way. And then Saturday and Sunday, we'll have reactions to Cup and Xfinity from the Chicago Street Course. We got content coming out of people like Haley Deegan, Shaman Gisberg, and Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Cleveland Farland, Dodge Ram, Frankie Muniz, Matt Benedetto, Kyle Larson, Ryan Preece, Chase Elliott, you name it. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.